Okay, so we are here to do something a little bit different, and Kendra's going to get this up as soon as possible. Consider this a Suicide Watch PSA, or, about pre or post suicidal thoughts. I had something happen recently, and I'm not getting into details. It was not me. And by recently, I mean, it hasn't been that long since it happened. Everybody's okay right now, and that's all that matters. But both Kendra and I decided that we really needed to talk about this for a minute. And you guys are in luck. I don't know if this is a good luck or a bad luck, but I used to be suicidal a long time ago. And there are still times where I'll start getting some dark thoughts about ending it all. So, to keep everybody who is going through this right now out of it, I'm not getting into what happened. So Kendra is going to ask me some questions and to keep me on track, because Lord knows that if you guys let me ramble on my own, we're going to be off in, copyrighted land here, through some rivers, up some valleys, in the mountain, leapfrogging into another realm that nobody knows how I got there. And then we'll finally circle back around. Well, that's fun. I don't think Kendra has enough video on her card for that. So Kendra's agreed to ask me some questions to kind of keep me on point to talk about this. I'm not ashamed or ever afraid to talk about this with anybody. I've talked about it with several people who are in need. I've gotten people help. We will be putting the suicide hotline number down, which is what saved me in the end. And we'll get into a little bit more detail about that. We'll be putting that down, and anybody who's actually gone through with it, we'll try to give you some talking points on that, because there's some specific things when you're going in to see them that you don't want to bring up. And trust me when I say they're going to be kicking you, or they're going to be kicking themselves harder than you could ever kick them. And it doesn't matter how scared or worried they made you right now. It's all about making sure that they're okay. So I'm going to let Kendra start asking some questions, and we're going to get into this.
So how old were you when you first had the suicidal tendencies that you noticed?
Grade school. It was probably about 5th or 6th grade. I was probably about 6th grade when I started putting knives under my bed.
Ooh.
Yeah. The knives weren't there for protection. The knives were there because I didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't know where my mind was at. I didn't really know what was going on with me. And when you're that young and you start having those suicidal thoughts, it really, really messes with you. Because it got really bad right after I got into middle school. And there was one time that Mom knocked a knife out of my hand and knocked me on the floor and pinned me down and screamed at me because I was getting ready to, I was pissed. I was in a hormonal pissed funk, though. This wasn't dedicated. It's not the dedicated stuff or the dedicated thoughts that happened later, but it was pretty intense. It was the one time I've ever grabbed a knife in front of my mother. Well, second time technically. But at that time I was trying to get her knocked out of the suicidal stuff, so that was fun. And by fun, I mean not fun at all.
Yeah.
No. It didn't really start getting bad until I shut down. It was confusing at first, and it was really dark during middle school. But I shut down. I shut down and started locking everybody out. I think by the time I was done with 14 and hitting into 15. So when I hit high school, I still had a life at school and stuff, but I was more, I had friends and still talked to people, but I was lost in my own mind trying to get away from the thoughts that weren't leaving me alone. So that's when it started getting really bad. It was high school.
So at what point, did you ever get to the breaking point where you just almost went through with it, or where you... What made you make that call, I guess, is what I'm trying to say.
So I used to have knives under my bed, like I've said, or under my pillows, under my bed, under my mattress. I collected knives later as a teenager, and there were times where I would just sit there, because suicide... My mom was randomly evangelical Christian. And when I say randomly, it doesn't mean that she ever stopped believing in God or anything. That wasn't the case, but my mom wasn't necessarily the most sanest individual when I was growing up. She had great times where everything was on point, and then she had times where she just went off into mental la la land, and the people that were around us weren't very helpful. Because back then that would have been, that would have been the really hyper-aggressive girlfriend she had. That was fun. So she would go in ups and downs. Like, she would go uber Christianity to realizing how toxic that could be and reeling it back into the normal land. And then there would be times where she would be like off studying Nostradamus' quatrain and talking about the end of the world. So, I mean, you can say that my mom isn't bipolar. She's never been bipolar or anything like that. But my mom has mentally not been all there, I think, and it took her a while to get her back to herself. I found out why later. Like, I found out why when I was probably about 17 or 18, and when I found out why, I think it was 18 when I found out. When I found out why, it all made sense. And it took her until she was in almost her 40s. She's in her late 30s, early 40s, or early 40s, mid 40s, when she finally pulled her head out of her ass and got it screwed back on straight. And I'm not saying that to be derogatory to anybody with mental health issues or anything like that. It's just how I saw my mom, because we would have awesome mom, and then we would have shitty mom, and then we'd have crazy mom, and then back to awesome mom. Like, there was a toss-up, and we didn't know which one we were going to get. And a lot of that had to do with what she went through. Or a lot of stuff that she went through. And the drugs didn't help. She didn't do drugs when we were kids.
Yeah.
She did drugs when she was a teenager. The only thing she did when we were kids, because it was still legal at the time, was speed. And that was just pure ephedrine that you got in many thin form. So I used to have the knives hidden from her. And when she was in her highest evangelical upswings up to the toxic part of Christianity where it can be toxic, I had a lot of self-doubting questions about suicide. And Christianity looks on suicide as a straight highway to hell. Like, you kill yourself, you've lost your chance, you go straight to hell. There is no get out of jail free card or nothing like that. You took away your opportunity and chance to bring whatever you had to the world. And that's really hard for a lot of people, especially a lot of people who are suicidal. Really, really hard for people who are suicidal like me. So I used to sit there with my arm held out, and I had the knife, and I'd just be like dangling it over my arm, just wondering when God would let me die. And I didn't realize that that was suicidal until later, because I just thought that was just me being crazy. Because sometimes I felt like I was going crazy. And I used to actually have scars all over the insides of my forearms from just dangling the knife, and I'd accidentally cut myself, and if I didn't die that night, I put the knife up and went on another day. I never actually tried until I was almost 18. When I was 17, I went to a therapist to go through regressive. Well, I went to a therapist because I had to. And I've been to more than my fair share of shrinks over the years. I've actually, the last several shrinks I've had have told me I'm one of the most grounded people they've ever met, and I'm just there for a chat session. But we'll get into that later. But when I was 17, I wasn't grounded. I was lost in my own head, lost in my own fantasy world. I used to have scrolled all over my notebooks, fantasy is reality. There is no such thing as reality. Reality sucks. Nobody wants to be there anyway. Yeah, that's fun. Once you get into that mindset, yeah, that's fun. Because it's really hard to pull yourself out of it, because you just disassociate entirely from everybody around you. But I was going to a weird school at the time that messed up all my credits, and I went to the shrink, and within the same 2-week time frame, I got told by this school, because it was an alternative high school, because I was failing school by that point. And the alternative high school had taken all my credits that I had gotten and put them in the categories they thought they went in. How ROTC, which is like military training for kids, how ROTC is a fine arts credit, I don't know, but that got put as a fine arts credit. Not happy about that still. I'm still angry about that. Anyway, so they went through all of my credits and they put them where they thought. Like, weightlifting became a fine arts credit. Don't ask. She refused to put weightlifting, ROTC, and dance, which were 3 classes that I had taken for physical fitness, down as PE classes. She put them down as fine arts and elective. So she took all of my credits and screwed all of them up on this piece of paper. While this was going on, I had gone to the shrink, and the shrink decided that I needed to know everything that was going on inside my head and wanted to do regression therapy with me. So for those of you who don't know what regression therapy is, they put you into a mildly hypnotic state and make you relive everything you went through that you blacked out. Yeah, we talked about it twice. I had that go on at school, and I didn't realize it was a nervous breakdown at the time, but I slammed straight into a nervous breakdown. I couldn't even comprehend trying to go back in my mind and relive the crap that I can't remember. I remember enough, and what I remember is bad enough. And the blank spots in my mind that surround times that my mom and I have talked about since then, like she'll always like bring something up, and I'll be like, I don't know what you're talking about, and she's like, oh crap, that was one time after we found you between the wall and the organ, or that was one time that we found you with this new bleeding thing, it's bleeding cut on you. And she finally started figuring out and associating that the times that they found me growing up where I was hiding and shaking and shut down and wouldn't talk, or when they found a new cut or a new wound on me, that's when they started associating the blank spots in my mind, or the blank spots in my mind. And so my mom actually kind of later, after the whole nervous breakdown thing, helped me a little bit figure out exactly rough pattern of where all my blank spots were. But there were so many times that they found me, and I was just I'd be shut down for 2 or 3 days. I have no memory. I have memory leading up to, which is bad enough as it is. I have the memory leading up to, then I have the blank space, and then I have like 4 or 5 days later is where my mind picks back up. So this shrink wanted to take me back and make me relive all of this that my mind blanked out to save me in the first place. So I went slammed straight into a nervous breakdown. I missed work, got suspended from work. First time I had ever done a no-call, no-show. Got suspended from work, which just sent me further because I couldn't go and do anything. I couldn't, there was nothing I can do to get out of my head. And there's chaos where I don't remember a lot of what was going on. Like, I remember crying, I remember throwing things. And then the next clear memory I had, I was already on the phone with the suicide hotline, and I had a knife held to my wrist. And not in the way that you survive cut. We're talking vertical cut. Like, I had a knife pushed against, and I was already bleeding. I hadn't hit a vein or anything yet, but I'd cut myself. And I was shaking and trembling, and I had this great amount of force holding onto this knife, and my wrist, I couldn't move my arm away. And I'm sitting here, and this was back before cell phones, so I'm sitting here with an actual phone, telling the person on the other end, if you do not talk me out of this, I'm going to kill myself tonight. I need you to talk me out of it. Because I didn't want to die, but I didn't want to be there anymore. And that's kind of where you get stuck. Is there are some people who just want to die. They don't want to exist anymore. They can't handle it. And then there's people who are going through this and they don't want to die, but there's just that part of them that just wants it all to be over. They just want that. They want the crap in their head to stop. They want the crap in their head to shut up. They just can't take it anymore. And that's where I was at. I never wanted to kill myself to just not be there anymore and to take myself out, because I knew what the consequences of that were. I knew who I would hurt. I knew what would happen and all the people that I loved. I knew those consequences, but it was more of a desperation to get my mind to shut the fuck up is where a lot of it boiled down to. And that's where a lot of it was at. And I mean, there's a lot of reasons why people decide. I hate even to say the word decide, because sometimes it's not a choice. A lot of times it's not. Once you reach that point, there's not a lot of choice in it. And sometimes there is. Sometimes people make they take time and they plan it and they go through all the steps. But yeah, no, it wasn't that I wanted to die. It wasn't that I wanted anybody to win. I didn't want them to win, quite frankly. But I just couldn't do it anymore. I could not get my mind to shut up and leave me alone, and my mind was my worst enemy and my only safe place. And that's why. And that nervous breakdown was the biggest nervous breakdown I've ever had in my life. It was the first nervous breakdown I'd ever had in my life, apparently, too. I've had 2 or 3 since then. Now, I am more than willing to recommend anybody has a nervous breakdown. And I know that sounds kind of counterproductive, but it really does clean a lot of shit out of your head. Just don't have a big one. Have a small nervous breakdown, like the bottle size portion. Here. We'll have a this size portion of a nervous breakdown, not a this size portion of a nervous breakdown. This is too big.
You don't do that.
And I say that jokingly to kind of ease up the tension, but in all reality, I really do, because I've had 4 or 5 more since then. I don't say about 4 more since then, but none of them were ever as bad as that one. Like that one, I got off the phone with a lady finally. I think I was on the phone with her for like 5 or 6 hours. And I got off the phone with her and I called my mom because she made me promise I was going to call my mom. Now at the time I was living by myself. Fun fact, my mom was actually in a different town. So the 17-year-old was left in a house by herself that was her house, but it was in my mom's name. It was weird. So I called my mom and I'm like, I need you. I just got off the phone with Suicide Hotline and I hung up on her. That was all I said. That was all I could say to her. Because I was just so fucked up in the head at this time. And my mom and her current girlfriend showed up. And my mom took one look at me, took one look at the house, turned to her girlfriend and said, I cannot come home with you. I will come home when my daughter's okay. And I give you kudos. Like, this is the woman I love with all my heart and soul. She drives me batty sometimes. But this woman stayed with me, like, brought the bed downstairs. We slept in the living room, and she slept with me. Like, she literally slept with me and held me and talked me down from nightmares, which apparently I had some really fucking terrifying screaming night terrors. And she was there the whole entire time. The only time she wasn't there was when I had to work, and when she had to work. And I actually went back to work, I think like 2 weeks later, because she wound up giving me an extra week off because I just couldn't do it. I thought that nervous breakdown lasted about 6-7 weeks. That's about how long I thought it took. Yeah, it was like 7 or 8 months. And I found that out from more than one source. It wasn't just my mom that I found that out from. Because I looked at her and I'm like, 7 months? That didn't happen. She's like, Sam, you were in zombie mode. And apparently I went to work, answered the phones, made the food, and came home. And I have no memory of most of that 7 months. I have vague memories of waking up screaming. And I have, it was at that time that I was actually using Lord of the Rings, the Fellowship of the Ring, to sleep. I had it on a VHS cassette, if this tells you how long ago this was. It was literally like when it first came out. It was still out in like the very first Lord of the Rings got released on 2 VHS tapes, like Titanic. And I would put it on, and I never made it to the Council of Elrond, but if I did not have that movie on, I would have night terrors. And like that was the only movie that would soothe me, which became a joke later with another friend of mine because my grandparents got me the extended DVD edition with like the 7 hours of bonus features, and I could never make it to the Council of Elrond without passing out. I'm like, I love this movie, you're gonna like it, let's watch it together. There are times where I'm still watching it and it's like a trigger. Like I'm watching it and I'm like, no sleep. I want to see Elrond's council and everything else that goes wrong after that. So, yeah. Gotta love it.
So what would be your recommendation? What would you say to someone who's kind of in that spot that you were in? Or the people around them?
Oh, that's kind of a twofold one. Am I allowed to do that? I don't know.
No.
Okay.
No.
Okay. Okay, so to them and around them?
Yeah, to the people and to the people around them.
Okay. To the people around them, it's not your fault. That's about the easiest thing I can say to you right now. It's not your fault. Unless you were the one who did it, but that's beside the point. Like if you have a wife that's going through something right now and it has anything to do with her childhood, it's not your fault. That doesn't mean you don't need to try to help her, but it's not your fault. Support structures are huge. Therapy, massive. I always recommend everybody to go to a therapist. I am not a shrink. I have been to enough shrinks, and I could probably pass shrink school with flying colors. Always thought about opening up my own therapist shop and calling it Head Shrinkers and have like little shrunken heads around, but then thought about that and be like, nobody was going to get my sense of humor. So I know a lot about therapy. I know a lot about the techniques and stuff that go into it, and therapy is the number one thing that you're going to want to have anybody in. Medications, I know a lot of people don't like medications. A lot of them don't. I have what's called atypical depression, which means I'm sad all the time. There is not a single day that goes by where I'm not depressed. And you guys can sit here and watch the YouTube video. I always say YouTube. You guys can sit here and watch the YouTube videos of me playing video games and laughing and having a good time. That doesn't mean I'm not happy. That doesn't mean I'm not having a good time in that moment. That just means that there is not a single time during that day where I haven't felt in the back of my mind that, hey, this is fun, this is great. I really suck at video games. I can't believe I'm doing this. YouTube is, everybody's going to make fun of me. Like, I get this little bitch in the back of my head that just sits there and makes me feel bad about myself and everything else. And I've learned how to deal with her, and it's taken years. And patience. Patience is one of the biggest things you can have. To the people who are going through it, go to therapy. If they put you on medication, they're doing it for a reason. If you have any side effects to any of the medications, especially if it makes the thoughts worse, go back. Tell them. If you do not make a connection with your shrink, get a different shrink. You can do that. You're allowed to. A lot of people think that they have to stick with the person they're with. If you do not feel comfortable talking to them, do not stay with them. Ask for another therapist. If they get offended, be like, I'm sorry, I just don't feel comfortable talking to you. We are not going to form a bond.
It's just like a medical doctor. You have the right to say no.
Oh yeah, you have the right to say no. And a lot of people get stuck in that, well, I found this place, it came recommended on Yelp and all of this stuff. Don't. If that person makes you uncomfortable, don't stay there, because you're not going to be truthful to them. You're not going to be honest to them. And being truthful and being honest about everything is the only way that therapy is going to help you. It's the only way. Depending on what's going on, depending on the circumstances around it, there's so many different reasons why people do it. And there's so many different things that drive people to the end. It could be a mental illness. It could be just severe depression. It could be severe anxiety. It could be, something happened to them when they were a kid and they can't deal with it. It could be a bunch of different stuff. I dealt with it, but it could be a bunch of different stuff. But you have to find a solid ground for yourself. My faith has always been my solid ground. Despite the fact that Mom went really toxic evangelical, I can tell you I've never once doubted in God's existence. I've never once questioned my own faith. Have I ever always been happy with God? No. I got really mad at him for a while. And that's the key word there. I got mad at him because of what happened. And I got the whole questioning, God doesn't love me. He's just an asshole. Let's go off and do this. And I was aiming to hurt him at some points in my life. And I got over that really quick. I stated earlier that a lot of therapists say that I'm really grounded. And I did that to myself. Because when I came out of that nervous breakdown, and I clawed my way out of it. When I clawed my way out of that nervous breakdown, I was sitting there and I was looking back on my life and I was trying to decide whether I was going to let the circumstances of my life control me or if I was going to control them. And that right there was the start for me. That right there was the moment where I kind of had an aha moment that I have power over this. And a lot of people don't find that. They don't feel like they have any power over it. They don't feel like they have any control. Turnabout's fair play, especially when you deal with a lot of it yourself, like I did. I'm a little bit controlling now. Just a little bit. When I say I'm a little bit controlling, I haven't had a relationship almost ever as an adult person because I control myself. I've had 2, and that was it. When I say that I'm controlling, it's not that I'm micromanaging or controlling or whatever. I get bossy. That happens. I'm very self-controlled, I should say. I think that's the better one.
Yeah.
You guys wouldn't think that watching YouTube, but you guys have to also understand that when I'm in front of the camera, I'm highly caffeinated on coffee now because I'm not allowed to have soda. Diabetes. I'm highly caffeinated. Kendra's at fault, and I'm also kind of playing for the camera. Just a little bit. You guys will see times when it's me, and Kendra will start trying to needle me from the back because I just shut down and I'm staring. I'm I'm going to get through this. When I go quiet, you're seeing more of my real self. Or when I go off on a tangent and I put the controller around and I'm turning around talking to Kendra, you're seeing more of me than you are when I'm like freaking out. Now, do I get scared and freak out and really run? Oh, hell yeah, I do, because I'm not expecting it. I have really bad eyesight. Like, I can't even describe how bad of eyesight I have, and I can't really see that screen. So when there's a monster right there and I'm off in the corner, oh yeah. Oh, hell yeah, I'm screaming. But at the same time, a lot of the peppiness and the joking and stuff, that's more put on, in a way. It's not that I'm not being authentic, but it's still a little bit put on. Like, we really, like, we'll be sitting here talking and planning and da-da-da-da-da and da-da-da-da-da, and we get the camera set up, and then she's like, hey, 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 and I'm like, ha, 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 ha. So, I mean, it's hard to explain.
More of an exaggeration of what's...
Yeah, more of an exaggeration of what's actually going on, because I'm not being fake. I would never be fake.
Yeah, you're just enlarging the part.
Being louder than normal. Yeah. I think that would
Which is impressive.
Yeah.
She's loud anyway.
Oh God, yeah. I can't help it. I was around Grandpa for too long. He couldn't hear shit.
What?
Don't make me hate you. So anyway, so I didn't let myself depend on other people. Because I learned growing up that people weren't always going to be there for you. So I really, back to the grounding thing, back to what we were talking about before this, I really became my own my own support structure. I don't know how healthy that is, and I definitely wouldn't recommend it to anybody. You really need therapy. You need a support system around you of friends and family who understand what you're going through, not who are being condescending to you and going, oh sweetie, I understand your problems, oh yeah I do, and then like rolling their eyes in the background. Like, you know when somebody's being condescending to you. You know when somebody's doing that. I mean, like a real support structure. Like, if I had her when I was going through all that shit when I was a kid and teenager and everything, she would have been my number one support structure. I got my sister later, my sister Tracy, who is more than happy to throw shoes at me. Like, she's part of my support structure. She will literally, if she sees me in a depressive slump where I'm literally in my own head and refuse to talk to anybody, she will stand all the way at the door, take her shoe off her foot, doesn't matter what it is, and throw it at me. She has creepily good aim. She nails me in the head almost every single time. I have gotten up and run after her. She's always near a door so she can shut it and hold it. And once I've calmed down, she's like, are you finished, bitch? And we all go off and do something. Or she goes and gets me drunk and we talk about it. Like, my sister is amazing. I love her to pieces. And, like, I had my mom when she was there. Because, like I said, it was her late 30s, early 40s before she got her head screwed on straight. So it's not like I could depend a lot on her until she got older. I hate to say I'm more mature than my mother, but I can't be. My mom looked at me, this was probably about 15 or so years ago. She looked at me and she just was shaking her head, and I'm like, what? She's like, I don't understand how you managed to do what you've done and basically learned how to forgive people and gotten to the place that you've gotten where you're stable, you're grounded, you're not letting what happened to you swamp you. And you're only like 26. You're like 25, 26. And she's like, I couldn't even do that until I was 40. I couldn't even be mature enough until I was 40. And she was just so shocked that I could. But turnabout's fair play. I shut a lot of people out. I still closed down. It wasn't until I was probably 27, 28 when I really started finding some good quality friends, where I really started opening up again. But that's what made me better. So... And I still shut down every now and then. I'm not going to say it's an easy road. I'm not. And I don't ever want anybody to think that I'm telling you that you have to forgive anybody. I'm not saying that. Forgiveness for me, and it doesn't have to be a religious thing. Forgiveness does not have to be a religious thing. But it's something that I always recommend to people, but not at first. Because you're allowed to be angry. You're allowed to be upset. You're allowed to be mad at whatever's happening to you, even if it's your brain doing it to yourself. You are allowed to be as furious as you want to be. You have that right. You do. But later, as you get older, the anger wears on you. And the anger starts to exhaust you. And the rage just wipes you out. Like, I can't even describe how tired I was. Because I used the anger to start the process of healing. And then the anger just got to me. Like, I really just... I wanted to sleep all the time. I didn't want to get up and do anything. It was so exhausting to be that angry all the time. And I didn't want to forgive. I always, associated forgiveness as in saying that they were okay and they were right in doing what they were, but that's not what it's about. It's about not letting that anger control you anymore and not letting that hold on to you anymore. And it's about letting go. It's not about forgetting. It's never about forgetting. But it's more about refusing to let that anger rule you for the rest of your life. So, if anybody actually goes through with it, that's the hard part. I haven't ever gone through with it. I've known people who have, but not close to me. Not close to me. I've known in the past, like I've heard, oh, this person did that when they were younger and this person did that when they were younger. I actually had to go get advice from somebody, which is not something that I usually do because I'm not trying to sound narcissistic, but I really do know a lot of stuff. It doesn't come across that way on the Sunrise Gecko channel. But you can ask Kendra. Well, ask Kendra. We really need to come up with a segment. Ask Kendra, and everybody can do their questions, and they can ask you.
We'll do a Q&A someday.
Yeah. Like live feed?
Yeah.
That'd be fun. Well, I'm not allowed on a live feed.
We'll shut you up somehow.
Okay, cool. Anyway, I actually had to... you can ask Kendra. Sorry, I got sidetracked for a second. If I find something I'm interested in, I know a lot about it right after that. Like, we were just actually doing what was it called again? The sleep thing?
Oh, the sleep study thing. I know what it's called. Basically, people fall into one of 4 types.
The bear, the lion, the
dolphin.
The dolphin, and the wolf. And it's like it's a specific type of sleeping pattern, and the whole entire world is broken down into these 4 different sleeping patterns and how to find your best sleeping pattern. I just learned about this last night, and I gave Kendra probably, a 35-minute lecture on it when she came in. So I have a tendency, once I see something that intrigues me, I'm a dolphin, by the way, insomnia. Once I find something that intrigues me, I do a lot of research on it. Or once I find something that affects me or affects my friends, like really hardcore, if it affects any of my friends, I am on it. I've got resources, not Wikipedia. I've got resources, like I've got like 5 different websites, I've got numbers for support groups, I've got like whatever it is. Like if you have an addiction to Legos, there is actually a support group about that. They have support groups all over the country for Lego addictions. Like, I'm not joking. Legitimate support groups for Lego addictions. Anyway, so I know a lot of stuff. I have a lot of information crammed in my head because I like to learn. I like to watch. I like to do documentaries and stuff. So I had to call somebody and ask for advice today, which was a new one for me. It's been a while since I've had to do that. Don't think I've actually done that to the person that I've called before. I think she was about as shocked as I was. But she's like me. Like, as much as I hate to say that sometimes, I love her to pieces. But we are so much alike that we get on each other's nerves. And in one of the ways that we are alike is that she does the same thing. If she sees something, except it's usually if it's affecting family or anything like that, she just dives headfirst and obsessively researches stuff. So when I asked her for help, I'm like, I need to ask you a favor. I don't want to bring up anything bad, but I need to ask you a question from that perspective. I asked her, and she actually has suicide support line stuff on her fridge and stuff for her grandchildren. And for friends and family. Like, she's got that information. I'm surprised she hasn't tattooed it on her arm just to be helpful. If you need this number, write it down. Like, I love her. Like, I seriously can see her doing that. Because she wants to help as many people as she can. And she's like, well, okay. And she immediately gave me the information I needed to know. It's not that I didn't already know the information, I just wanted confirmation on it. So if you ever have anybody actually go that far, you can't ask why. That's a big no-no. When they're in recovery or finally awake, if they haven't actually passed from it, you can't ask why. Maybe later. But right now, they're going to be beating themselves up harder than you will ever be able to beat them up. Because they're inside their own head and know all of their own weaknesses. They already have that little dark thing in the back of their mind telling them everything bad. That's the only thing that they can hear is everything bad. It doesn't matter what led you to that point. It's that you can't get rid of that everything bad. Everything sucks. Everything's down. It, depending on recovery, depends on why you did it, but that's for the shrink to get into. That's not for you to get into. Your support. You can't go in there and be like, why did you do that? Why did you scare us? How could you do that? How are you selfish? You can't say that to them. They're in their absolute most vulnerable spot that you have no idea on how to comprehend how vulnerable they're at in that moment. Like, I've held off because I wasn't in the right headspace because that's what I wanted to ask. And I've held off because I know that that's not what this person needs to hear. I know I need to go in there. And what you do is you go in there. I love you. You mean this much to me. From here we go forward. If you need help, I am here for you. If you need a ride to go see the shrink, I am here for you. If you need this, I've got your back. That's all they need to hear. They don't need to get into the whys or hows. They don't need to have you adding your voice to that little darkness that's already in the back of their heads. You don't need that. Hell, when you're too close to, if you ever catch somebody who's attempting it or thinking about attempting it, don't scream why in their face. That's what my mom did to me. Why? Because I hate you. Yeah, it was wonderful. It was a great time. That was puberty. But when you get to that point, when somebody is at that point where they're getting ready to just let go of it all, you can't comprehend the headspace they're in. Even I have a hard time comprehending that, and I was there with a knife to my wrist, on the phone with a lady begging her to help me save my own life. And even I have a hard time coming to terms to it, which is kind of why I wasn't in the headspace today. I'm going to go tomorrow, and I'll be in a better headspace tomorrow, in part because we did this. The minute Kendra came over today, I looked at her and I want to do a PSA for suicide. And she's like, I'm with you. We're going to get that done. First thing we film, we're going to do that. And that's what we're filming right now. This is actually the first she came in today, and it was awesome because I had my friend over here and not my creative partner on the Sunrise Gecko channel, or Sam can't or can. I had my friend, and I had my sister, because she's my sister now. Mom adopted her and her family adopted me. And I had my friend and my sister sitting on the couch with me laughing at Monty Python. Or not Monty Python, the Full Monty. We watched the Full Monty. She has not seen the Full Monty. If you haven't seen the Full Monty, you need to watch the Full Monty. If you tell me that movie's crap, bite me. That movie is genius. It is. I know, I'm on the roller coaster.
Yeah, back on topic, please.
Anyway, so I had my best friend over here today and my sister helping me out and watching a movie with me and just relaxing with me and giving me time to help get me in the right headspace and being in full agreement. Yeah, we need to do this. Suicide hotline, number below. Like, keep the number running up underneath the thing. She's already going to have to edit enough as it is. She's going to kill me. So.
This may be the last recording we do.
Yeah, it's okay. It's okay if it's murder.
Oh, yeah.
That's a joke. No.
Don't.
No. That's a joke. Like, yeah, Jerry. Fuck. Okay. So, do you have any other questions? Because I keep rambling. This is why she won't let me live feed.
No, she's never allowed to live stream because keeping her contained. And some of the stuff she says.
I'm a force of nature who innocently says very bad things sometimes because I don't have a filter between my mouth and my brain. Well, I do.
Your mouth
I do. My mouth operates on its own wavelength, and my brain, by the time it catches up with the words coming out of my mouth is 5 sentences ahead of it. So we're playing catch up the whole time, and I'll say something 5 sentences into it. Kendra's already been like this for 2 minutes, and I'm like, I shouldn't have said that. Yeah, that's why I'm not allowed to live stream.
Yep.
Yeah.
So this are probably going to wind up being its own video, being like, here's what happened when we attempted to make the video.
So, Sam has foot and mouth disease.
Oh, yeah.
Foot in mouth. I have a tendency to put my foot in my mouth and bite down on it. I'll be sitting there gnawing on my own foot while I'm talking before my brain's caught up to my mouth.
Yep. Let's take your sip so I can ask one final thing.
Okay, hit me. Don't really hit me. That would hurt. Ow.
It's going to leave a bruise.
It will.
All right, serious again. Because this is a serious video.
Very serious.
Yes. Some of the comedy I'll keep, but the rest of it will be a separate thing.
Okay.
So, is there anything else that you would like to say to anybody out there who maybe either is struggling with this themselves or has a loved one who's going through it? Just any, I guess, a closing thought, I guess.
Get them help. If you have anybody you know who's suffering with anxiety issues, depression, especially severe depression, any type of mental illness, any type of abuse situation where they went through any type of abuse, even if it was just verbal and psychological, didn't have to actually be somebody hit me. If you have anybody you know who went through that stuff and has been struggling as an adult, if you have anybody you know who lost their kids because they couldn't manage to keep themselves on track, any one of those can pose suicidal risks. Anybody can. Sorry. Any one of those can pose suicidal risks. It doesn't have to be like somebody who's been suicidal for years like I was, or, you know, even though that usually builds up over time. It's not like you have the first suicidal thought and now you're cutting your wrists. It's not how it works. Suicide takes time because you literally have to build yourself up to it. There was a case recently where a girl basically convinced another kid to commit suicide because he loved her. They just started releasing the texting information from that night. And if you look at it, it's months or weeks of her texting him, pepping him for it. And in real time, reality, it takes years. Sometimes it can be the span of 1 year if it's really bad. Or if they have like a nervous breakdown or they break or something like that, it can like speed up and be fast forwarded. But most times suicide takes years. It's not something where you just suddenly have this thought and now you're going to try to off yourself. That's not how it works. And I'm sorry, my nose is running.
You're fine. You're fine. Same spot.
Get them help. Be an ear. Listen to what they have to say. Encourage therapy. And a lot of people are going to be anti-therapy because they went to a bad therapist at one time who didn't listen to them. Let them know they can have that choice. They don't have to be confined to that one therapist. I know somebody who had an issue where the parent knew the therapist and the therapist told the parent everything that happened in the session. That's illegal. That's very illegal. That's one of the most illegal things to ever happen in therapy because it breaks that confidentiality that you're supposed to have in that person. You know, if they're having mental health issues, don't stigmatize it. Don't ever stigmatize mental health issues. Don't be afraid to go near them because their brain is wired differently than yours. Don't suddenly find out, don't make me hit you. Don't suddenly find out that I couldn't see the face you made earlier. I'm sorry. It distracted me. Were you like...
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
That's what I thought. Don't suddenly find out that a friend that you've known has had schizophrenia for years, but you've known them for a while. You've known them for, a year or two. Suddenly you find out they have schizophrenia. It's not like they have the Black Plague. These things are treatable, not with just medications, but with routine, there's a lot of ways to control it. Like schizophrenia and bipolar disorder are the two that probably need the most medication because the medication will literally set them on their path and set them straight. The problem is that a lot of them don't want to take their medication because their medication makes them disassociate. It makes them not feel like they're present. It makes them feel like there's a muffle between them and the world. And so there's a fine line between trying to live without medication and having the emergency medication in case you have a bad day. There's a fine line between bouncing the medications, but they have to get help to even get them. Now, fun fact, just going to a regular therapist, they cannot prescribe you medications. You have to go to a psychiatrist, which is an actual medical doctor, to get psych meds. So you want to make sure that they know you need to go to a therapist to go talk to somebody, to go help figure out how to help you without meds, or how to help yourself even with the medications that you're working with. but they can't prescribe you anything. So now you have to go to a psychiatrist who you're going to talk to for 10 minutes, who's going to read over your notes, and who's going to give you the medication that they think you need. Some of them are longer visits. If it's more than one time that you've been to them, usually it's about a 10-minute. Are you having any issues? Are you having any side effects? Okay, cool, go. It's not that the psychiatrist doesn't care. That's what the therapist is for. The therapist and the psychiatrist work together. Now, there are some psychiatrists who will literally see you for an hour or two and work out through all your issues like a therapist would. However, they charge way more, which is why I always tell people to go see a therapist. Now, most cities, especially the bigger the city, they have, if you can't afford it or don't have insurance, they have sliding scale therapies. Here, where we're at right now, are they allowed to know where we're at?
Sure.
Where we're at right now, there's a place called OCC. And we'll put that information down either in like a spot over here, or Kendra will put it down in the comments. There's a place called OCC, and they actually do a sliding scale for therapy. Now, they have rules, because if you don't pay, like if you're not in the 0% where you don't pay anything, if you don't pay the whole $10 that it takes to go there, like if you forget to pay X amount of times, then you get a mark on you. If you don't show up, you get a mark on you, because they are seeing so many people. And one of the best therapists I ever had was there. And I was put on a sliding scale and paid $10 every single time I went up there, because I needed to get therapy before I got my test results back for the HD. So that was something totally completely different than what I was going through when I was younger. That was new, but I already had a pretty good foundation for dealing with it. And that's one of the therapists who it was so fun. She's like, you're just here to talk, and I'm just here to listen. And then she wound up talking to me too. Like, we would just have little chit chat sessions. She got so upset because I missed too many of them and I got kicked out. And she got a little bit upset at that. And I'm like, honey, I'm sorry. It's my fault. It's my fault. I did this. She's like, I know, but I won't get to see you anymore. So go to therapy. Get help. Talk to your doctor. Your doctors can always give you referrals to a psychiatrist if you need to see one. Just be there. Talk to them. Help them. Just help them reconnect with the world around them. Because once you get into that deep of a depression, it's like you're walking in a fog. You don't see or touch anything around you. You just keep getting separated from it. It just keeps getting thicker and denser as the years go by, and that's one of the things that eventually leads to it. So that's about the best advice I can give anybody. Go talk to somebody who has professional skills to do it. Get the medication you need, and or just the support structure you need to get through it. And do not think that you have to do regressive therapy. Do not let anybody talk you into that unless that is something you feel you need to do for yourself. Regressive therapy has benefits. However, the older you are, the less likely of a chance you're going to survive it, because regressive therapy is one of the fastest ways to get an adult person to commit suicide, because they cannot handle what their mind already pre-forgot. Now, there are some people out there who can handle it. Usually they are in their late teens and 20s. Once you get into your 40s, don't even think about it, because your mind cannot handle the shock of the knowledge that's about ready to be let go. So if you do decide to do regressive therapy, don't just talk once or twice about it. This is something that you have got to set up a support structure for, because you're going to be reliving everything you forgot. And I think that's one of the scariest things, and one of the reasons why I locked down so hard and went straight into the nervous breakdown, is because I didn't want to relive what I went through. I remembered enough of it. I didn't need to remember the stuff that was already blanked out.
You forget for a reason.
Yeah, and sometimes it's healthier for you to forget for a reason. And I know that bothers some people. I mean, I have control issues, and sometimes I wonder, and I'm like, oh, I can handle it, and then I remember the nervous breakdown and the almost suicide attempt. So I was like, no, I couldn't handle it at 18. I can't handle it at this age. Yeah. So if you ever decide to do regressive therapy, that is a sit down you're going to have with your family, with your spouse, with your kids if they're old enough, with your therapist, with your doctor, with your psychiatrist. Like, you're going to have this conversation with so many people just to be ready for it, because this is going to slam you straight into fuck upville in the head. Like, you're going to be in fucked up land for a while, and they're going to have to be around you while you're going through this, and they're going to have to go through it with you. Because if you try to do it by yourself, you're not. I think it's one of the fastest ways to a suicide to attempt ever. Anyway, that's all I gotta say on it.
All right. Well, guys, if you or someone you know out there does need help, the suicide hotline, I'm planning on having it at the bottom of the screen here. It's gonna be in the description along with the OCC.
Yeah. I'll get you the information for that one.
Yeah, we'll have that down in the description for you guys. If you need help, get help. It doesn't mean that you're weak. It doesn't mean that you're worthless. It just means that you need help. Kind of like trying to lift something that you physically cannot lift.
Yeah. It just means that you're taking that preemptive step because you know if you don't, it's going to get bad.
Yeah.
And it's helping future you and future self and future family, future possible kids, whatever your future holds. Because if you do it, you don't have a future after that if you don't survive it. And if you do survive it, then things just get tougher because you've already reached that point once and it's easier to fall over. The statistics of suicide are high, but they're higher if you've already done it. Repetitive suicide attempts are common after the first suicide, after the first attempt. That's one of the most dangerous things about it is that once you've reached that point, you've already gone over that edge. If you lived it, you're going to try it again, unless you have the help and the structure around you. Now, any of the suicide hotline that we have up right here will actually be for the United States of America because that's currently where we're at. I will double check and make sure that Hawaii and Alaska follow the same guidelines with it. If not, we'll have those numbers in the description below.
Yeah.
I will see what I can find for other countries. I don't know, though. I don't know country to country. I think there's too many of them out there for that, but we'll see if there's a general one or something that you can at least get a hold of, even if it's dialing in to the American one. I don't know how y'all feel about Americans, but if that's all we can find, we're going to give whatever resource we can.
Something's better than nothing.
Yeah. So, anyway.
Well, that's all we've got here, guys. We just wanted to make sure that we were putting that word out to anyone who felt like they were lost or in that dark space. But we're going to move on to something else to get ourselves back up and going.
After we take a break.
Yeah, we're going to need a break after this. This is kind of heavy.
Yeah.
And I'm a little sick, so. Anyway.
Yeah, she said she had allergies this morning.
It's still allergies.
Anyway. All right. Well, bye.
See ya.